Mm-hmm.
The way you talked about Eaton, particularly feeling like, was it something that he ever said that made you feel like it, or did he actually say you can come to me like a father figure?
No, in a team type situation, they say you can come and talk to me or whatever. I don't ever recall him saying like a father, but that's the way I looked at it because I didn't really have one. But you're my leader, and I figure you're going to tell me the truth, right? Because I'm playing for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then absolute refusal.
Scott, when we walked in there, in fact, there's one part of this story that a lady happened, somewhere she was connected with the university. She happened to be underneath the bleachers where we were being shouted at. She said she just could not believe what she was hearing and the way we were being talked to. But this guy, as soon as we walked in, or somebody might say, well, you had armbands on. We did. We had armbands on because we were told that Wednesday or Thursday before the game, don't wear the armbands on the field Saturday during the game.
Mm-hmm.
That was our reason for going over there Friday and trying to plead our case regarding the armbands, and we had the armbands on. Some could say, well, why did you have armbands on? Well, as a student, we have rights, right? We have the ability. We're not doing anything wrong. We're not breaking any laws.
Mm-hmm.
And there's free speech. So we had them on as students.
Mm-hmm.
Weren't in uniform. As soon as we walked in, he'd sit down. Somebody would try to say something, shut up. And then that's when he went into his tirade, were it not for me, you'd all be on Negro color relief or Grambling or Morgan State Starbridge. And then he just went into this spiel. And from this moment on, you'll never play another down of football for the University of Wyoming.
It sounds to me, and you confirm or correct if maybe there's no way of knowing, if you guys had not gone, and I hate to even ask you this, had not gone over there with the armbands on, sounds to me like it wouldn't have made any difference at all once he heard the idea you guys were up to.
And he already knew that, by the way, because the captain, Joe Williams, had already gone over there Wednesday or Thursday and told him that some things we were considering and probably told him how we were feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So he already knew.
Okay.
So, and back to your question, yeah, it probably wouldn't have mattered because this guy was the kind of guy, how dare you even breach the subject that you have some feelings about whatever.
You were questioning him.
Exactly.
And his ego, whether you want to call it racist or not, it was his position to be in charge and large and let you know.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right off the first email you sent me, I hope CBS gets it right.
Mm-hmm.
How is it you say that they most get it wrong?
They say, they being the media,
right,
because they are lazy. Having worked at the amount of time that I did, I can say this with no problem. People are lazy, especially back in the day. A wire story comes across. Does anyone have time enough to investigate it? There's no Woodward or Bernstein going on here, so they just keep regurgitating. They grab it, boom, they read it, boom, and it's moving on. Nobody has time to look and see if this is true, but if anybody took the time to think about it, especially in my case, why would you put everything that you work for and you're finally there and you're going to put it up for somebody else's, because of someone else's religion? Mm-hmm. Now I really want to play the game. Oh, wait a minute. They were turning on sprinklers to cleanse the ground because blacks, and it goes back to Cain and Abel. The religious part of this goes back to, so the forerunner of the black race was one who committed, I can't even remember exactly because I got to get it right.
Murder.
I think he did kill it. Yeah, he killed his brother. And so that's what it's supposed to be linked to. Oh, give me a break. Think about it. It's so crazy.
It is. In this day and age, what amazed me, I know it was 1969, but it was like 99.9% support for the coach in university and defending Eaton.
But Scott, coaches are gods.
Yeah.
Especially back then. We were just getting into that easygoing, hey man, peace, brother, all that. We were just getting there. So the coaches, I don't have a problem so much with that except for when you don't have a right to speak.
Yeah.
As I said, as long as he was winning, it was cool. It was all right.
They don't see the injustice that was done as long as they were winning.
As far as coaches were concerned back there, they could do no wrong and overlook all this stuff that's happened.
I read it somewhere. The Black 14 were said to, the word that was used was threaten to wear black armbands. Did you feel that was in any way the right word, threaten?
Scott, remember that coach I've been talking about? How are we going to go up? First of all, again, here we go again. No, to answer you, no freaking way.
I was just kind of leading you into saying that. No.
Keep in mind, when there were only a handful of bowl games back in the day, what makes a bowl game really popular is because not only the notoriety, and there are only a few teams, especially back then, they may have had only 6 or 7. Mm-hmm. The Rose Bowl, the Orange Bowl, they had, the big ones, Sugar Bowl. Not only would you get notoriety, but players got all kind of souvenirs, jackets, and money to spend. You had $15 a month as part of your stipend as an athlete. Well, you try to divide that up, and you want to do your wash, but other than that, you didn't have any money.
Yeah.
When you went to a bowl game, they kind of opened up, the pockets, and you were allowed to have money, to have souvenirs, to get, all kind of, and then notoriety. Okay, we would have put that up for grabs. Again, a top 10 team, even a top 15 team would have been something, but we were 12, and I think in some cases maybe even a little bit better, but 12 was consistent, okay?
Yeah.
We had 2 teams that we had to beat. Houston and then Arizona State also within the conference. We had already beaten Arizona. We had beaten a good Air Force team. We had 2 more to get past, and then we could have gone undefeated. We would have put all that up. There was nobody else who was that high up. I mean, what were they putting on the line? These players, these teams. If you're having a know-nothing year anyway, well, what's the big deal, right? So, but we would have, if we had thought that way, it would have been the stupidest thing to, go there.
I'm reading what you wrote here. Why would we jeopardize an undefeated season, a bowl game, and notice by the NFL because of someone's religion?
That sums it up right there.
I'm just glad this story is getting out now.
That's why I corresponded with you. Things that are not true, there's so many untruths, whether they buy it or not, I can't help that. I continue to tell the truth, the story.
Yeah.
And, people make up their own minds if they thought we were wrong or if they, and I say, again, just like Eaton, I would do it all over again. I probably would record the situation. I would probably go prepared as we were going over there that Friday, which was the day before the game, and I'm going over there with my boy who I ended up interviewing. His name was Tony McGee.
Mm-hmm. He's one. Yeah, I was going to say one of 2 that went into the NFL.
Yeah, and so as we're going over there, big old snowflakes and so forth, beating us about the head and so forth, and we're going over there to see him. And Tony turns to me and he says, "Hey man, I think this might be it." I said, "What do you mean this might be it?" He said, "I think we could end up getting kicked off the team." Now Tony had already dealt with this guy. I don't know specifically. He had dealt with him a year more than I had. And I'm just a little sophomore and saying, "What do you mean this might be it? Are you kidding me?" He said, "I think we might be gone."
Wow.
I said, this doesn't make any sense.
Had Tony been one of the guys that had talked to him the day before?
Only our captain, Joe Williams, was the only one who talked to him.
Would threatening be the right word? Mel Hamilton was the most vocal of your 14. He wasn't even given a chance to be threatening either, right?
No. By the way, Mel had his own agenda. You would have to talk to him. They had a situation, Mel and the coach, a disagreement. At one point, his fiancée happened to be white. Eaton was like, supposedly, now again, I mean, I wasn't there. He and Mel had supposedly laid the groundwork for the way he was feeling or being vocal. But you know what? Let me stop there because there were some guys who were vocal. Mel was just one of them, okay? He wasn't the only one. And oh, by the way, we weren't being led by, I said that instigators, outside instigators or agitators. I mean, there was nobody who could have turned me into, a follower when I had so much at stake.
Yeah.
I thought this is the way it played out in my mind. We would go talk to the coach, and he would give a definitive yay or nay, but he would also have an idea that we're really serious about how we feel. If they were, and I wanted to ask him, cleansing the ground because blacks had played on it. That's what I wanted to hear. There was no, I'm not going to give all this up, man. I'm having an incredible year. I'm in dreamland, man.
Yeah.
Wyoming opened up and said, hey, you can play your position. We want you, yada, yada. Well, okay, cool. You went to the Sugar Bowl just a year ago or so and, playing big-time ball.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, let's do this.
So you had everything taken away all at once. How much do you think, particularly noticed by the NFL, was hurt?
Well, this actually happened. When my class came out, I got a letter from the Cowboys. They had been trying to reach me. I got a letter from Green Bay, and I got a letter from St. Louis. The best-looking letter was from the Cowboys, who sent a scout down the year that Drew Pearson and I, same age, he went up and made the Cowboys and became Staubach's number one receiver.
Oh, yeah.
I had been on a ball for that 2.5, 3 years, and going to send a scout down. I worked out for him, but I was not in any kind of shape and pulled a muscle and all of this other stuff, and yet they still said, come on in as a free agent, okay? So let's go back to your question. I was being considered, after that great start, as one of the top safeties. I mean, 2.5, 3 years later, here they are contacting me and then sending a scout to the University of Tulsa, where I worked out with, along with a couple of other guys who had been playing for the last 3 years. That the potential was there. I mean, good-sized safety, even now, over 6'2", over 200 pounds, could run. And oh, by the way, that Arizona game, that first game that I had the 88-yard interception, I had 9 tackles and dropped 2 of them for losses. And the 88-yard interception. The stats were just unbelievable. They were staggering. Now, every game was not like that, but it was like for your first game as a sophomore, and, it was a good start. A start that's still 47 years later in their record books.
Amazing. I interrupted you when you were talking to Tony, and he was saying this could be it, and you said, what?
Yeah, he said, I think he's going to kick us off.
He just knew more about it than you did?
I wasn't at the original information gathering thing. Plus, he had played a year. He said, you don't know this dude, man. He never did say anything to me. Eaton didn't, except for one game, Air Force game, one of those rah-rah, get in there and, make something happen type things. Plus, I had my own defensive coach. I had 2 defensive coaches, my defensive back coach and also the defensive coordinator. I didn't have to have any kind of relationship with Eaton.
Well, he didn't need to tell you much, it doesn't sound like.
No, he didn't. So I just went out there and tried to do my job,
All right.
Yeah.
I'm not final judge, I know, of what God had in mind for how this turned out to be a good thing for maybe some of you, but and I don't know how many you would guess that would be of 14.
Yeah, actually, everybody did pretty well. One of the guys, from education, even Mel, he was into education and in politics there in Casper, I think it was. A couple of guys went to the Super Bowl. Others became involved with the auto industry and did quite well. But one was killed by his wife, whatever.
Wow.
Life things, if you will, for a few of them got in the way. But, if you look at it and where we were, basically dumped by the wayside, to being able to dust off and carry on, got to remember, the Vietnam War was big time. So we had lost our deferments by getting kicked off the team. And if we transferred, all of the credits would not transfer. So that really opened it up for us to potentially end up in Vietnam. And that was a very real scenario.
That would have been a game changer for sure.
You'd think. And we were threatened by unknown, if they weren't threatening your life, not that we had a whole lot of it, people said, well, your deferments, you kiss those goodbye. All of that played a role.
Looking back at Coach Eaton, I just don't understand how people in Wyoming at the time sided with him and the university, didn't see how the guy really affected 14 different lives.
He didn't care. Not only that, Scott, Fritz Shermer, the late Fritz Shermer, our defensive coordinator, who would later become defensive coordinator for the Green Bay Packers and won a Super Bowl with the Packers. He was in that meeting. He was one of the coaches. Of course, Eaton was doing all the talking. But when I looked at Shermer, who was a drill sergeant, just kind of dude, I saw tears in his eyes. I saw him crying.
Wow.
And I knew it was a point of no return. 3 of his 11 guys had just been snatched.
I thought, in reading the first emails of yours, that this guy is really speaking out on behalf of his teammates, but he's not saying a lot about himself. I want to know how he felt about it.
And also remember this, Scott. I've hit you with a lot. You've taken the time to listen. You've listened. And again, I say, I think anybody who would just listen, they would realize, this is crazy. Why would they do this? Why, you know what I mean?
Cutting their nose off despite their face, and Eaton just didn't have any clue that's what he was doing. Or he thought that an all-white team was good enough.
It was him being challenged, and that's what got his standard up, if you will.
Okay, so you're saying maybe it didn't matter even if he did realize what he's doing to his team.
Right.
Wow.
Because even in the end, where he was quoted as saying he would do it all over again. You can
and this is the 2000s when he says this.
Yes, exactly. That lets you know there was no way. And when Tony turned to me and said, I think it's over, he had a better clue about the guy than I did. I just thought there was no way. That's why Schembechler, here is somebody else who's stronger than dirt. You see Schembechler on the sidelines, and I used to watch him. I'm thinking, oh, my God, this guy has lost his mind. You know, he's crazy. He's this and he's that. But that man kept asking me, what was Eaton thinking? Yeah. Coach, I don't know. I had no clue. Because I'd have to interview Schembechler quite often, and he would come to our station to do his coach's show, and he would look at me and, Barry, what was that man thinking? I don't know. And he said, it just didn't have to be.
Oh, well.
And since it was 69 for Bo starting with Michigan, that's when he started with 69. He was aware of, I guess, a lot of what was going on, needless to say. It's like, why? Give me a holler, try to help you out in any kind of way, but keep in mind, it'll be very interesting after we see CBS and see what they've done. Because they spent a lot of time with all of us, but he couldn't get any of the, as far as I know, unless something happened at the end, he couldn't get any of our white teammates to speak.
Oh, really?
No.
The release that I first saw about CBS Sportsnet, they did say that, yes, there are members of the rest of the UW and BYU teams players.
I think unless somebody stepped up, when I last talked to him was a couple of weeks ago, because I tried to help him, find some guys who would talk. He hadn't been able to get anybody to step forward. Some had said they would do it, and then by the time he got ready to interview them, they said no, they weren't going to do it because they thought it would look bad. So it'll be interesting to see. I think the BYU players will have a say, but producer for CBS kept asking me, why won't they say something? Why won't they? You're asking the wrong person, but I know that they hated our guts, in my opinion, because we destroyed their season. And those who were seniors, their opportunity to go to the pros, because the team then went south and, nobody really had a shot but one or two guys.
That game the next day in Laramie against BYU,
right.
I don't remember the coach's name before Lavelle Edwards. Hudspeth had volunteered that he would put his team on the field with no blacks.
I don't know if he had any, to be honest with you.
Interesting. Well, I'll let you go.
If you need me, you know how to reach me.
I appreciate you saying that because I just might.
Yeah, you might. It's a lot of information, too. And, again, the way it falls out with CBS and, people who may be chiming in on the post and saying this and that and the other. So you never can tell.
Jay, thank you.
All right, Scott. I appreciate you taking the time.
And I'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
All right.
Bye now.
Bye.